Hi there, everyone. I hope everyone is doing well today. So, today is the video for Tuesday, October 20th, and I think I will go ahead and dive right into our online course schedule. So, today I will be going over a lesson called CTA Practice, an MLA style mini lesson, which you can always find under the Lessons tab on our Blackboard page. But first, I would like to go over the homework for today. So the homework for today is to read, annotate, and analyze the topic clusters in a Google document. So what that means is that the guidelines from last time contain 3 topics that you can pick from to choose about for the third paper, and you have to choose one of those topics if you have not already. So the topics you can choose from is abortion, COVID-19, and social media. So you have to pick one of those topics. And whatever topic you choose, like say you choose the topic of abortion, then you have to make sure that you read and view all of the sources, and those are the things that you will be comparing and contrasting within the third paper. And yes, you have to use all 3 sources for whatever topic you choose. So that is the homework. That is part of the homework is choosing a topic if you have not already, and reading and watching all of the text in that cluster topic, whatever you decide to choose. So then the other part of the homework will be beginning to draft the CTA or the third paper, and I went over the guidelines in our last video. And the other part of the homework will be to read chapter 40 and 50, and reading response number 5 will be due on Thursday by midnight. And the other part of this week's homework is also to complete the RA reflection letter. Just like for the first paper, a reflection letter will be needed for your final portfolio. So this is something to be working on and tucking away within your Google Docs and saving it within your Drive and to include it within your Google website. So it's very similar to the DCA reflection letter, and it should just be a page long. And just like for the DCA, I included a sample reflection letter for the rhetorical analysis. And it's very similar. So what you should be working on is responding to the RA reflection letter. And these are the writing prompts to sort of begin drafting your RA reflection letter. So it's very similar to what I had for the DCA reflection letter. So I will go ahead and read those. So what you want to do is just describe your initial reaction to the assignment once it was presented. Describe how you got started, how did your time management go, what were your general processes used to complete the essay, what sort of difficulties did you encounter, what would you improve upon, and what did you enjoy about writing the RA? How did you feel about the writing process? And lastly, how did you feel about Rob Walker's article, There is No Tech Backlash? How did your impression of the article shape your thesis statement and writing process of the RA? So that's also something to be working on as well. So I will show you where the reading response number 5 is. So I'm going back to our Blackboard page here, and it will be under discussion boards. And reading response is all the way at the bottom. This is reading response number 5 for chapters 40 and 50. And that is due on Thursday, October 22nd by midnight. So then from there, you can create a thread and reply to the discussion board. And that is part of this week's homework as well. So anyway, I have gone over the homework for today, so I'm going to go ahead and move on to our CTA practice and MLA style mini lesson. So I'm going back to our Blackboard page here, and it will be under lessons and the CTA, drafting the CTA and MLA style lesson. So the art of comparative textual analysis, or the CTA. So throughout your academic career, you'll be asked to write papers in which you compare and contrast two things, which might be two texts, two theories, two historical figures, two scientific processes, and so on. Now, classic compare and contrast papers in which you weigh A and B equally may be about two similar things that have crucial differences, or two similar things that have crucial differences yet turn out to have surprising commonalities. So you may feel confused about how to construct the paper that isn't just a mechanical exercise in which you first state all the features that A and B have in common and then state all the ways in which A and B are different. So to write a good compare and contrast paper, you must take your raw data, which is the similarities and differences you've observed, and make them coherent into a meaningful argument. So what you want to do is you will contrast when you describe the differences between the two or more entities. In our case, it is comparing the three different sources. So you will need to look for all of the things that are different from one thing to the other, and the answers really are up to you. And you really have to use your critical reading skills that we have learned so far within Comp 1, and you have to decide and you have to think. So things to be thinking about when comparing and contrasting these three sources is what is different about the two compositions. You'll need to locate points of contrast. So in order to contrast, you may consider looking at claims. How are they different? You'll also want to contrast the author's ethos. What authority does each have to speak or write on this subject? And you also want to consider their sources. Does one author have more sources? Are some sources better than the other, and how so? You also want to consider their use of pathos. What does each author care about? And in terms of dates, when was each article published? Is one more recent than the other? So the art of comparison. So you'll need to locate points of comparison, and you may consider looking at the publication venues. Where were they published? How are the authors similar? What is the same about them, if anything? Now, in terms of audience, you want to think about, is the audience the same or similar? Who is being appealed to here? And you also want to think about values. Which values does each author appeal to? Are there some that are similar, and which? You also want to think about content. Do they write about the same things? Where? Do they refer to similar things? And anything else that might show comparison. So what you really have to do is start thinking for yourself. So at this level of composition, it is not enough to simply compare and contrast. We need to become comfortable entering the conversation ourselves, which means we must use our critical thinking and reading skills. So the first thing you want to consider is, do you have any experience or personal relationship with this issue, and what is it? And what is the general claim of each composition? What do you think about this claim? Do you agree, disagree, or both? Can you find a few reasons given by these authors? What are they? Do you think these reasons are logical, and if so, how? And if not, how so? Which of the authors makes the most compelling argument, and why do you think so? And is there anything else that you want to say about the subject? And you are perfectly welcome to do so and to use your voice. So the art of putting it all together. So this will act as practice for the CTA. So once you sit down and read your sources and begin a list of comparing and contrasting, you will want to look at your results. Now that you have compiled invention, brainstorming, and findings, it's really time to put it all together, and you want to construct a paragraph that summarizes the following. Things that are different about the compositions, things that are similar about the compositions, and your own take on the issue and why you came to these conclusions. So moving on from that, I would like to talk a little bit about MLA style today, and also in-text citations. So this is our MLA style mini lesson. And next class, I will have a more in-depth lesson about MLA style, or it might even be sometime next week. We'll see how our schedule falls this week. But for now, I will just do a mini lesson on MLA style. So what is MLA style? MLA style refers to the style recommended by the Modern Language Association for preparing scholarly manuscripts and student research papers. and it concerns itself with the mechanics of writing, such as punctuation, quotation, and especially the documentation of sources, or quotations or citations. So the MLA Association holds a convention every 2 years to change MLA style according to ongoing style trends, the changes made in the field of writing and education, as well as in changes in language. So they are the major authority of in-text citations and also documentation and works cited pages. So basic in-text citation rules. So in MLA style, referring to the works of others in your text is done using parenthetical citations or in-text citations. This method involves providing relevant source information in parentheses whenever a sentence uses a quotation or paraphrase. So usually the simplest way to do this is to put all of the source information in parentheses at the end of the sentence, or i.e. just before the period. However, as the examples below will illustrate, there are situations where it makes sense to put the parenthetical elsewhere in the sentence or even to leave that information out. But in our case, our example is when it comes to technology, we need to be comfortable enough with technology tools and services that we can help point our patrons in the right direction even if we aren't intimately familiar with how the device works. Now, in this case, the in-text citation comes before the end of the sentence, before the period, and the king signifies the author's last name. So we are quoting from that author's source and also the page number, wherever that information came from. So you will need to format your paper according to MLA format. Now what that means, what MLA format simply means for each paper, and we've been doing this right along, is making sure that you have a heading with your name on it, also your professor's name and the course name, and also the date you wrote the paper. And you also want to make sure that you title the paper. And you want to make sure that it's in 12-point font, double spaced. And you also want to make sure that you have this page number up in the right-hand corner here of how to insert page numbers. And you also want to make sure you have in-text citations. And really that is MLA style in a nutshell, but I will go into further detail into one of our lessons very soon. But again, right now I just want to focus on an overview. So you will need to quote sources in your paper. So quoting means exact match for original source, used best for impact, and you want to use quotation marks used at start and end of quote. And all of these techniques need in-text citations. So let's say that you want to summarize briefly from a source. You can do that through putting someone else's words in your own words, or shortening a much larger passage or source material into a smaller condensed summary, or highlighting parts of major source information. That still requires in-text citations. Now, paraphrasing is a little bit different in terms of putting someone else into your own words. Usually paraphrasing uses a much smaller amount of information, or it could equal roughly the same length as the original passage or source material. So in terms of additional resources, you can look at Purdue OWL, and I definitely recommend looking at Purdue OWL. Purdue OWL is an excellent resource that I used for tutoring, that I used for all of my classes. Purdue OWL talks quite a bit about MLA in-text citations, how to format quotations, also how to include a works cited page, and also how to summarize, paraphrase, and summarize. But this page is about in-text citations, so I did put in the link of how to include in-text citations just to get you all started on that. And I also include a link to the live library chat for JCC, so the librarians can help with citations in MLA style. So all you have to do is click on this link, and it will take you to this page. So if you need to submit a question or even chat live with a librarian, you can do so during their library hours, but it also allows you to email them if you need additional help. But the library hours are typically 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. Monday through Friday. So if you need to chat live with a librarian, you can do so. And all you do is fill out this little form here with subject details in your email. And then all you can do if you want to chat with a librarian live, you can click chat with us, and they will happily help you with any sort of question. If you have questions about MLA style, in-text citations, a works cited page, and also reading strategies. So they're very helpful in terms of that. And the people at our library are super wonderful. You can also make an appointment with the Learning Center for tutoring and help with writing, which is something I've been saying right along throughout the whole semester. That's not really new. The Learning Center offers free tutoring and help with writing. So if you click on this link, it will take you two directions on how to make an appointment with a Learning Center tutor. And they will happily also help you with in-text citations, MLA style, formatting, reading strategies, or even help with the paper in general. Now, the Little Seagull Handbook, which is a second textbook that I did require for our course, also provides chapters on MLA and in-text citations as well. And it also includes a style guide on MLA formatting and style. But now I would like to move on to the quotation sandwich. So the quotation sandwich includes an introduction or lead-in that should explain who is speaking and set up what the quotation says, and the follow-up statement should explain why you consider the quotation to be important and what you take it to say. So this is when you introduce a quote. So it's important not just have a quote sort of floating in the middle of your paragraph. You also want to introduce the quote. So this is the moment you will tell the reader who is speaking, and you'll have to do this at least once. And if you use a direct quotation, which this paper does need at least one direct quote from each source that you are using, you want to cite it during an MLA with a MLA parenthetical citation style or in-text citations. Now, you also want to respond to the quote by explaining the author's point, showing the reader what the author is saying, and elaborating on the main idea. Now, the most important part here is tying the source to your own claim and reason. So students will do this by elaborating on the explanation and pointing out how the evidence or sources supports the writer's own argument. So it's important to introduce the quote, and you can find an example here. And this is actually this is actually a quote from a book called They Say, I Say. And that's definitely a great read in terms of how to use quotations. So you want to introduce the quote. So what they're doing here is introducing the source that they are using, which is from the New York Times. So Tobias Smith is one author whose reasoning is the most logical of all. He is the only one who supports sanctions on Korea and the current one who calls out the current administration. Now they also go on to include the quote. So then he writes, there are not many choices in the administration that are handling the war on Korea effectively. So what they're doing here is introducing the quote and then making the rhetorical move of including that quote. And then they build on it further. So then they also explain or evaluate that quote. So then they go on to say, it is very clear that Smith's position is that our own government is not responding to the missile threat with enough force. It would seem that sanctions are not enough. So then they build on it by explaining their connection to their own argument. So then they go on to say this unique perspective is very different from the other two voices in my conversation. So they are comparing the other authors. And they go on to say Smith further cites an admiral who is also concerned with our government's response. Of all the authors, this is the only article in favor of a boots on the ground war with the Korean adversary. So this is the process that will help, or the slide that will help with drafting and invention. So what you want to do is begin by pre-writing, which is something that I did introduce last week. So hopefully you have already decided where you fall on the issue and what you think of the issue you have chosen. So now is the time to begin drafting an introduction and drafting a claim. And I would probably also begin drafting your body paragraphs here. Anyway, that is it for today. But if you have any questions, do feel free to email me at any time. or stop in during my office hours. I have office hours this week. I may expand office hours this week from 2 to 5 p.m. I'm still deciding about that, but I will let you all know if that is the case. And of course, as always, you can find my office hours under the virtual office hours tab, and it will take you right to the link with my virtual office hours. Anyway, that is it for today. I hope you all have a lovely day and a great evening. Thank you all and have a good day.